I wonder, what is the most generous act you have ever witnessed? Maybe it was something heroic, a response to a crisis, or maybe it was something small but profound, like sharing a meal made with love or a kindness given without expectation of return. The other day, in a group text, we asked a friend how he was going to celebrate his birthday. It was a big one. And he responded like this. And referring to his spouse, his wife, he said, "I am looking forward to a quiet dinner with the most beautiful person in the world." Wow. What a generous act of love, to name the goodness in the one he loves. You see, generosity has a way of staying with us, doesn't it? It moves us, it shapes our hearts, and it inspires us to respond in kind. On Ash Wednesday, we began our Lenten series, Cultivating the Fruit of the Spirit, inspired by Paul's teaching in Galatians 5. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, generosity, faithfulness, self-control. Well, these qualities are the natural outgrowth of a life led by the Spirit of God. And this is really kind of wonderful. They are a way to test, to evaluate how we are doing with our spiritual health. We can look at these various fruits and say, is this fruit growing in me? Am I growing in kindness or patience or generosity? And so today, we are looking at that gift of generosity, the way that living flows from remembering what we have received. So I want to reflect just for a moment on our parishioner and friend, Isabel Yates, just one of the many extraordinary saints here at this cathedral, and whom we buried this week. Like so many of you, Isabel made a life by giving and serving. Her father once told her, "Be proud of the place where you live, and live in a way that place is proud of you." Well, I think this city is very proud of Isabel, and she fulfilled her father's words, because when the mayor ordered flags at half-staff on the day of her funeral, our city's love was evident. And when we left the cathedral here after her service, we processed up 3rd Street, past the burying ground and the fire station, and the firefighters stood outside on the road with their hands over their hearts in tribute and in gratitude. And then when we turned onto Main Street, the marquee on the Kentucky Theater read, "Thank you, Isabel Yates." And then the workers from all of the city buildings were out in the street. They were waving. Their eyes were filled with tears. They were grateful. Because what we witnessed that day, and in so many days of her life, was the power of a generous life. And yet at the heart of her generosity was something deep, and that was Isabel's faith. She didn't give and serve because she just wanted to be kind. She gave because she believed. She believed in God's abundance. She believed that love is meant to be shared. She believed that everything, every gift that she had, she received from God, and it was her joy to share those gifts with others. Now, isn't that what happens in the life of faith? We're shaped by the love we receive, and we can't help but share it. We can't help but just give it away. And there's a really important truth about faith and about life in general. what we pay attention to grows. So, if we pay attention to negative things like, for instance, resentment grows. But if we practice gratitude, cultivate joy, or choose generosity, these things take root in us and produce fruit. So if we want to grow in the Spirit, we must tend to the Spirit's fruit. And if we want to grow in generosity, we start by remembering what we have already received. And that is what we heard today in our first reading from Deuteronomy chapter 26. The people are called to first remember. As they enter the land that God has given them, they are commanded to bring their first fruits of the harvest to God, to God's house, and to present them in a basket, not as an act of obedience in terms of like being forced to do so, but rather as an act of remembrance and gratitude. And so they gave. And as they gave, they tell their story. A wandering Aramean was my ancestor. We went down into Egypt, and there we were enslaved. But God brought us out. God provided. And now here we are standing in blessing. After 40 years of wandering in the dry desert, God has given them a land to cultivate. Before they give, they remember, and then they make their offering. Because generosity isn't an obligation. It is a response to what God has done, to who God is, and to the very abundance in God's very being. And after that, they celebrate together. Now, isn't that what we do here at Christ Church Cathedral? We gather here, we tell our story, and then we make an offering, and then we celebrate communion together. We follow that very same pattern. Every time we come together, we remember what it feels like to walk through these doors and to be welcomed, to be accepted, and to be loved. We remember the prayers that have been whispered in this space, the hands that have held our hands in times of joy and in times of grief. And we remember the way that God meets us here in worship, in friendship, and in moments of quiet grace. And when we remember, generosity flows, and we make an offering. We give not because we must, but because God has given first. Because everything we have is already a gift. Our time, our resources, our very lives. And we give because we join in this great exchange of God's love. A great exchange that God has set into motion. It's a beautiful dance. And yet, generosity is not just about giving. It's also about receiving. And that's really important because for some of us, receiving kindness and care or help, that's difficult. And we'd like to think of ourselves as strong and self-sufficient and that we can handle things on our own. But of course, that is a great temptation. Because if we struggle to receive from others, it just might be a clue that we struggle to receive from God. When we resist receiving, we're really resisting the truth that we are loved, that we are worthy of care, and that God's love is freely given, never earned, but something we simply receive. So perhaps a big part of cultivating generosity is opening our lives to receive God's love, to allow ourselves to be helped, and to trust that we don't have to do it alone, because we are never left alone. And finally, I love how this passage in Deuteronomy ends. After giving and remembering and receiving and offering, they celebrate together. You see, generosity is an invitation to step into joy and to participate in the abundance of God's love. So maybe you know the joy of giving, of seeing someone's face light up and knowing that your kindness made a difference. And maybe you've also known the joy of receiving, of being cared for, and realizing that you are not alone. Both are acts of grace, and both are the ways that we experience God's love. And so today, we've learned about the fruit of generosity through the importance of remembering. Because when our lives become distracted, we can forget why we give thanks. And we can forget the God from whom all blessings flow. So as we walk through this beautiful season of Lent, cultivating the fruit of the Spirit, let us remember that what we pay attention to grows. And so may we grow in generosity, not just in what we give, but also in what we receive. And as we do, may we discover again and again the deep joy of a life that is rooted in the great celebration of God's amazing love. Amen.